McGraw-Hill Professional presents The McKinsey Edge, Success Principles from the World's Most Powerful Consulting Firm. Written by Shu Hattori. Narrated by John Haag. Introduction. How it came to be. There are people in this world who are born gifted. They have photographic memory, or they remember things for a lifetime after hearing them only once. These people may not need to rely on written principles. They absorb everything like sponges. I am the opposite. I need to jot everything down. From general feedback sessions, to pointers in meetings, to keynote speech phrases, to interesting frameworks, I write everything down. I also try to invent different diagrams to make the visualization and memorization easier. I keep 2 notebooks, in fact. One is a clean and tidy one, learning purpose. The other is more scribbly and disorganized, daily purpose. Generally speaking, people learn by studying. Then they put what they've studied, their knowledge, into practice. Practice leads to experience. More experience leads to ability. Ability is the final stage where you have mastered something that no one can take away from you. I entered McKinsey, known as the firm, in April 2008 as a business analyst. I made it to the next level by June 2010, a direct-to-associate, DTA, promotion at the firm. Then I transferred offices and left for Groupon.com in Asia, the fastest-growing social commerce company at the time, as one of the management executives. There my salary tripled in less than a year to a high 6-figure salary. But then I came upon an idea of a secret wedding proposal business and founded my own company. It attracted local TV and magazine attention in 6 months. It was one and only, occupying a unique niche market. But after a year and a half, I realized I still wanted to go back to McKinsey. I felt that I had not finished learning the nitty-gritty details of project management at the world's best place for professional leadership. In less than a year after rejoining, I made engagement manager in record time. It was a combination of determination and luck, or that was what I believed until the winter of 2013. One chilly morning, I was sitting in the firm's office canteen going over my learning notebook, or the rule book, brushing phrases up, cleaning diagrams, and making synthesized rules from my past project, aka engagement. I liked the peace and quiet of the moment, sitting in a comfortable lounge chair and soaking up the morning sunlight. A colleague stopped over and asked me what I was doing, so I told him. Then he raised my notebook and his eyebrows at the same time. My colleague was amazed and suggested I publish my writing. It was the first time I'd let anyone see it. Until that point, I'd always imagined everyone to be doing the same thing. Initially, I was a bit hesitant. I didn't know if it was deep enough. Then, slowly, as I started going over my notebook, I thought maybe his suggestion wasn't so strange. It seemed like a very good reason to write a book, to share all the pieces of wisdom that I had collected during my time at McKinsey. As this new project started taking shape, I also sought out other amazing colleagues for advice. I thought, what if they also had 2 or 3 burning rules that made them extremely successful on their roads to leadership? As expected, many had a few golden rules they kept close at heart. Now I was sure that I could create immense value in what I was about to produce. In hindsight, the learning notebook was my reason for success. Unknowingly, it enabled me to correct mistakes faster, preempt potential roadblocks, and get ahead of the learning curve. Simply, it elevated me to a leadership position and got me thinking faster. In a more general sense, the notebook told me not only what to do, but how to do it. By reading this book, hopefully, you can gain the same benefits. What is important is that you put what you learn into use immediately. I always try to put my rules into action the following day or at the next opportunity that comes around. Try to focus on what matters to you. The first principle of the book is focus on what really matters, now, and rigorously put it into practice. It's probably not possible to master all of the principles at once. Create a plan and go batches at a time. Lastly, keep in mind that practice equals experience, which leads to ability in the long run. Why should you listen? McKinsey loves leaders, but as the old saying goes, leaders are never born, they're made. Before joining the firm, I used to wonder why so many people from consulting firms, especially from firms like McKinsey, made it to the top. Let me tell you some numbers I found. Did you know that according to USA Today, the odds of a McKinsey alumnus becoming a CEO of a publicly traded company of market value over $2 billion are the highest in the world, at 1 in 690? The runner-up didn't even come close, at 1 in 2,150, also another consulting firm. In 2011, 150 McKinsey alumni had top spots in companies with annual sales of over $1 billion, not to mention that 70 McKinsey alumni have been CEOs of Fortune 500 companies in recent years, according to CNBC, which cited Duff McDonald, a New York-based journalist and contributing editor for Fortune magazine. McKinsey is considered a CEO launchpad by many aspiring leaders. After joining the firm, McKinsey consultants go through a wide array of leadership training events. These week-long training events start very early, beginning 9 to 12 months after a consultant joins the firm. Then they repeat almost every year for the next decade. The emphasis is not merely on teaching different types of tools, processes, and problem-solving techniques for leaders, but on ingraining the awareness of leadership early on. Ultimately, I have learned that the biggest obstacle for many people is that they are not sufficiently self-actualized to realize that they could become leaders. McKinsey sets different forms of leadership out on the table early on: client leadership, problem-solving leadership, team leadership, knowledge or functional leadership, and entrepreneurial leadership, to help consultants build strengths and discover weaknesses. McKinsey calls it development needs faster. These different categories of leadership are helpful because they slice the necessary individual growth attributes in a meaningful and simple-to-understand way. One common stereotype of a leader is someone who can stand up on stage and deliver a captivating speech, or who is calm and composed in times of crisis, or who is willing to go out of his or her way to help others. These are important qualities, but there's really no one way of defining what makes a good leader. Take Apple, for example. Tim Cook, the successor of Steve Jobs, is not a particularly inspiring public speaker. He is a steadfast operations guru with his calm demeanor to push things through. Steve Jobs, needless to say, was the visionary pitchman. Since Jobs' passing, Apple's behemoth market cap has continued to grow, almost doubling, with a very different and unique leadership profile. According to many McKinsey consultants, engagement managers and principals alike, it's hardly the case that they meet principals and directors that are very similar to one another. Leaders come in different colors. Some leaders don't like to speak in front of a large audience, but still do a great job on the line. Therefore, you are better off if you are exposed to many different types of leaders during your apprenticeship years. This is one of the reasons why McKinsey consultants can grow to be prominent leaders. Recall 1 in 690. Almost every project consultant gets to work with different internal senior leaders and client executives. The hardest transition. For a lot of people, the associate to engagement manager transition is the most challenging and unforgettable experience. It's no secret. My first study as an engagement manager was literally a nightmare. A senior director said in an interview, "I was staffed on a transportation client with an ED, engagement director, who absolutely had too much on his hands, an associate who was a bit of a psychopath, and another associate who wouldn't listen to a word I said. I was this first-time manager and struggling to keep everyone alive. Even after so many years, the experience brings back so many horrifying memories." He laughed. Another principal said, "My first study was memorable. I had an associate that was a bit off. When I told him to come back with some synthesis on past interviews, he came back with 50 one-line syntheses of all the interviews. When I saw that, I just knew my weekend was blown. It wasn't that he lacked a good mindset. Instead, he was just off, if you know what I mean." These stories are not uncommon. For the first time in many people's lives, they were, like it or not, in full charge of everything and helplessly out of control at the same time. From end output deliverables to designing optimal work processes, from assigning meaningful tasks to helping individuals stay personally motivated, from thinking day in and day out about client needs, as one other director puts it, even in the shower, to taking on rapid-fire update inputs from senior leaders, it was overwhelming. There was no hiding behind anyone's shoulders. You had to be the first person to walk in the team room and the last one to go. People looked to you for directions, and it had to be ready and practical. But like most first-timers, the experience takes a steep nosedive at first. As a result, the survivor learns the survival tactics. But more important, according to many senior executive leaders and McKinsey principals and directors, the foundational leadership principles stick with you and stay consistent until you reach the top. You will see plenty of these examples in this book. Structure of the book. This book is structured into 5 main sections. Building the Self, as the name suggests, focuses on self-improvement. The section is split into 3 thematic areas: get ahead, hang tight, and multiple reflections. There are many interesting mini-themes throughout the book, but the core of personal victory boils down to a few simple things. You need to think ahead. You need ways to deal with tough times. You need to have a heart to reflect more so you can optimize your future success. Growing with others focuses on how to influence your team and other stakeholders. Leadership transition is learning on one hand your growth needs, but on the other hand, and more important, stakeholders' needs. The 3 important themes here are communication, connection, and understanding. When you want your team members to grow, the key is to put in more effort than you would normally give for yourself. This is how hard you should work at growing others. Excelling in process management is about productivity themes. I've managed to include a few enablers, tools that help you structure and complement your current work process. In becoming a highly structured and process-driven person, it's important to execute the basics right. That is why you will see overly intuitive principles at first glance. Yet, as the saying goes, most seemingly simple things are the most difficult to execute. Going the extra mile, the 4th chapter, focuses on 6 advanced principles. They require deliberation. The last 2, prepare to renew your life and start to create your own profile as a leader, are especially important throughout your entire career. You will need to develop these thoughts as early as possible, but also be ready to change them along the way. Become a thinker and a writer. The 5th and final chapter ties all the principles together into a single theme. Thinking sets leaders apart. Enrich your world by asking the how and why questions. Then, as a way to internalize your thinking, put these thoughts on paper. Marvin Bower, the founding father of management consulting, says good writing empowers you to distill and crystallize your thoughts. The success principles in this book should not be hard to put in practice. If they were, it would mean I did not do a good job explaining them. The correct way to think is that these principles are immediately implementable from tomorrow, but each principle will take time to develop into an actual ability. The general thought framework I have used is to first describe what each principle is, then why it's important, how it should be done, and when, where, or in what situations it may be most applicable. A master coach with over 2 decades of experience coaching top executives once told me that accomplishing great things requires setting an extremely low bar so that it is easily attainable at first. For example, instead of saying you will go exercise 5 times a week to lose weight, just say you will go once a week. If even this sounds difficult, then say, I will go walking once a week instead of taking the cab or subway on my way home from work, and so on. It's the incremental move that is important, he stressed. Therefore, these principles should be managed the same way. Take small steps to make the giant leadership leap in the end. Now, let the curtain rise. Chapter 1. Building the Better Self. There's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. Morpheus, from The Matrix. This chapter focuses on fundamental self-improvement. Contrary to the typical approach to improvement, fixating on just your faults and weaknesses and remedying them as you go along, the principles here focus on a more proactive approach. This way you can maximize your strengths. Until I reached a certain level of maturity, I used to think of growth as a random journey. It may fortunately work for some, but not for others. But later I realized it's a lot better if you can create your own structure and rigor for self-improvement. For me, that rigor is in 3 areas, which I call get ahead, hang tight, and multiple reflections. Get ahead. In Get Ahead, there are 6 principles. Below, I have synthesized the core messages in 1 line. Principle 1. Focus on what really matters. Constantly have a razor-sharp awareness of what you are doing and how it is adding value to you or to your problems. Principle 2. Start with the hard stuff in the morning. Work on the hard and painful tasks in the morning to deliver productive output. Principle 3. Catch small signals and make a difference. Apply the Pareto analysis or 80-20 rule to your everyday life. Principle 4. Have a 30-second answer to everything. Form an answer beforehand by mastering the double-clicking technique and coming up with short answers. Principle 5. Front-load your project. Build the necessary trust and credibility by completing work as much as possible during the first week, following the basket of essentials. Principle 6. Create the right end-output image. Try to get in the habit of creating the end-output image aggressively to earn various stakeholders' trust early on. Principle 1. Focus on what really matters. McKinsey charts are not very colorful. The text size is the same throughout except for the title. The fonts follow either the client's format or Times New Roman, and footnotes follow a specific rule. Graphs and diagrams also have standardized templates. 1 chart, 1 message, 1 format. Nothing fancy. It's because we want the recipient to focus on one thing, the implication. Everything else will deter this effort. McKinsey consultants are extremely careful over a single word or a phrase because that really matters. To a CEO, numbers matter most. Mark Hurd, co-CEO of Oracle Corporation, said he learned from his boss at NCR, a global company in consumer transaction technologies, that it doesn't matter how gracefully you deliver a presentation. In the end, if your numbers suck, there's not much to say. His best advice is to focus on underlying substance. Almost everyone who enters the firm's gate relearns what he or she has previously learned and been proud of back in MBA training or in other companies regarding how to draw charts. Instead of catchy and animated call-outs, they learn to use a blank call-out text box with an arrow pointed to a man-like figure made up of a circle and an isosceles triangle. Rather than using size 12 and 24 fonts to accentuate an important point, the entire page is reduced to an even font of 14. They no longer use green text to show that something is good to go, but instead a green traffic light made up of 3 circles aligned vertically. Everyone picks up the essence of what's important on a chart. As you transcend or think about the next leadership horizon, you need to focus on what really matters for that position. At McKinsey, you go through a course specifically targeted to build problem-solving leaders. Here we learn about staying ahead of the problem and leading by bringing together different stakeholders. In this position, we often get asked by principals and directors, "Can you update me on the current status?" This is another way of saying, "Tell me what really matters on this project in 30 seconds." Therefore, it's imperative to synthesize and regularly play back in your head the problem, the current solution, and the proposed approach in terms of milestones, people, and timeline. What really matters can be different from industry to industry. For the automotive industry, it's safety and design. For the pharmaceutical industry, it's the effectiveness of the drug, how fast it works, and how long it lasts. For a headhunting company, it's the candidate's average length of stay at his or her newly appointed jobs. For consulting, it's the message, so what, and the estimated impact that implication brings. Consultants arrive at this message and impact through following a series of problem-solving steps. In McKinsey's case, it involves 1. Identifying the problem, 2. Structuring the problem, making sure all the issues are covered by using an MECE, mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive approach, 3. Prioritizing and eliminating unnecessary problems, 4. Creating the analysis and work plan, 5. Conducting the analysis, 6. Synthesizing to derive meaningful results, 7. Delivering the right communication message. In the end, the message needs to be tailored to fit the client context, capability, resource, and execution power, to lead to any tangible impact. In many cases, it's possible to list out multiple things that matter, but the important thing is to distinguish what matters most to the problem at hand. For automotive, it may additionally be ergonomics, fuel efficiency, and product launch time on top of safety and design. For one client, the issue was how to build and finish a car in the next 36 months. Thus, what became the most important matter was product concept to launch time. The team accessed and analyzed the top 5 automakers' product launch schedules. The winner turned out to be Toyota, with the shortest at 24 months, and the slowest was 40 months, a gap that is hard to believe. Logically, the next question became, why? It was attributable to the number of platforms each automaker had. Toyota had the fewest. It built most of its cars on the same platform, all around the globe. It forced the design to fit a particular platform mold, and thereby eliminated the longer design concept to platform path. That knowledge for our client was gold. It was what really mattered. When you focus your efforts on important cornerstone areas, other things start falling into place. Successful entrepreneurs say don't worry about what you're going to call your company. The right name will pop up once your product or service idea is on the verge of release. Yet so many people still dwell on insignificant things like the name, logo, and how the business card will look. Those are important but less meaningful, especially in the beginning. Focusing on what really matters will help streamline your journey. In this case, focus on creating the core services of your business. Test them out. Iterate with as many people as you can. Challenge any doubts or premonitions you may have. Usually, a clear alarm should go off when you hear yourself saying, "I will start on this when the business gets rolling." Ask immediately, "Can I do it now? Why not?" Then take the necessary incremental steps forward. Usually, this will come in the form of decision-making, closing outputs, or narrowing the solution space. Whether it's directly related to your work, personal projects, skill enhancement, health, or relationships, try to seek what matters most in that area all the time. How might you accomplish this focus and prioritization? There are 3 ways to cut to the chase. 1. Using the sense of urgency and deadline. 2. Creating or following the critical path. And 3. Linking it to the money. First and easiest to work on are the urgent items with tighter deadlines. In your head, without jotting anything down, you should roughly have the time it takes to complete a certain task. Although your estimate may be off at times, it is still a good place to start by eliminating those items that are far out into the future. When you do, take an objective stance. Consider the company logo, for example. It may seem important and urgent, but in reality, it's not. These logos change all the time, and hence, you should just leave it alone for a while. Think Google. It really has no set logo and frequently changes its home search page look. Second, understand the critical path to get to your goal. At McKinsey, during a marketing or branding study, we sometimes run an exercise called the Consumer Decision Journey. This exercise tries to figure out where, how, and why consumers arrive at the decision to buy a particular product. We derive insights by gaining both an external and internal perspective of the target consumers. Externally, we run and analyze a consumer survey based on initial consideration, various online and offline touchpoints, timing of those interventions, consumer-led research, and other factors. Internally, we map out how the rational mind arrives at making such decisions, which we call the consumer decision tree. For example, if you were to buy a new TV, we would look at each of the 5 or 6 variables important to you as a consumer and rank them: price, brand, size, type, LCD, LED, or OLED, and other functionalities such as HD. In this case, typically you will first think about the size of the TV. Then it splits to either price or brand, or you might adjust the size based on price and brand. These decisions are the branches of the tree. When you consider what matters in any situation, it is important to keep this kind of decision tree in your mind. Third, think about linking the task directly to its financial impact. This is the most straightforward yet remarkably precise method for most people. In other words, it's the key performance indicator, KPI, or the meat of what you are doing. For example, writers like to read. They also like to research. I sometimes get carried away and absorbed in, or distracted by, depending on how you look at it, some topic for an insane amount of my time. Yet it is producing written content on paper that actually indicates progress. It is the only way to reach the end product. Writers get paid to write.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?